Joining us right now is Carl Douglas, again, one of the defense attorneys for Simpson back in the 90s, and now partner of Douglas and Hicks here in Los Angeles, California. How are you, counselor?
Hey, Rich, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for coming on. What are your thoughts? I assume you have it on your television wherever you are right now.
Yeah, I'm just turning it on right now. I'm hopeful, Rich, that he's going to be released on parole. He had a parole hearing in 2013 for 7 of the 12 charges. There was a granting of parole then. He has been a model prisoner since then. He's had no write-ups, so I think there should be the same result. And I think all of this attention really enhances his chances because everyone knows that the world is watching.
So when you say it enhances his chances, what do you mean by that?
I think it makes it stronger that he is going to be given parole.
Because we're paying attention?
Correct.
Are you implying that we weren't paying attention much before?
But since there is all of this unprecedented attention, I think it just puts more public pressure on the board, and it highlights the fundamental unfairness of his original 33-year sentence for a case that really wasn't worth more than a couple of years.
Now, I do know because I watched that the Oscar-winning documentary O.J. Made in America. You called it this sentencing for this crime the fifth quarter. What did you mean by that?
I grew up in Los Angeles at Washington High School, man, and our school was not the greatest football team, but we had people that fought well. And whenever we would lose the football game, there'd often be a fight after the game. We called the fight the fifth quarter. So we may lose the game in the fourth quarter, but we were going to win the fight in the fifth quarter. That is exactly, Rich, what happened here. Although O.J. was found not guilty in Los Angeles for the murder case, I believe the judge sentenced him to 33 years based on what happened in L.A., and that was the fifth quarter.
Carl Douglas, who was part of O.J. Simpson's defense team in the 90s, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show as O.J. is currently going through a parole hearing in the state of Nevada. He's joining me, Carl Douglas, here on the Rich Eisen Show. Do you think O.J. is ever going to talk about what happened in 1994?
I don't think he will. It's now water under the bridge for him as far as his life is. There has been this incident now that has really captured attention as well. I can't imagine him sitting down and talking about what happened in L.A., Rich.
Even if he gets paid for it?
I don't think that would happen because he knows if he gets paid for it, the Goldman and Brown family will be right there to take the check from him if he ever got a check.
So what do you think if he does get parole, he does? Are you aware of his plans? What they might be?
I haven't spoken to O.J. face-to-face for over 10 years, man, but I suspect, one, there'll be some sort of an arrangement so that he can return to his Florida home and that area. They have very good laws protecting people from civil verdicts and judgments. I suspect he is then going to first recapture some time with his 4 kids because he's always been a family man. He's probably, man, gonna seek some sort of female attention, and then, as soon as he can, return to the golf course. He hadn't played golf in 9 years. That's always been one of his passions, and I suspect he's going to do that.
So when did you last saw him at Johnny Cochran's funeral? Is that the last time you saw him?
I did. April 2005, man. I remember that one of the speakers asked everyone who had ever been represented by Johnny to take us to stand up into the audience. And there were dozens who were there who stood up. I turned to my right, and I saw O.J. standing up, and a few seats away was Michael Jackson standing up as well. It was a scene that I'll always remember.
Carl Douglas, the attorney, one of the attorneys for O.J. back in the 90s, joining me here on the show. What do you say to people who think this guy did it back in the 90s and cannot abide seeing him as a free man? Carl, how do you respond to that?
You know, I'm a civil libertarian, man, and first and foremost, Rich, I believe in the justice system. He was tried by a jury of his peers. He was found not guilty, and now he is entitled to go on with his life, man. There are cases that go on all the time, every day across courtrooms in America where there is a verdict that may go against the public persona or the public sense of what happened. But this case, for some reason, has still stood in the craw of much of Americans. I would recommend that they let go and go on with their lives and allow him to go on with his life.
Was there never a point where you and Johnny doubted that his innocence?
You
Carl?
know, I always am clear that because my personal opinions were drawn in large part from conversations that I've had with O.J. over the months of our representation, and there is a privilege that I must hold that inviolate. There's the attorney-client privilege. I never discussed my personal opinions or things that were between he and I when I was his lawyer.
Okay. And best you can tell, because he said very famously after the acquittal that he was going to do everything he could to search for the real killers. Do you know if he's ever done anything on that front, Carl?
You know, I haven't had much contact with O.J. after that time, so I can't be the one to speak to what he has or has not done in that regard, Rich.
Do you think it's something that he is going to undertake, since he clearly believes that the real killers, in his mind, must still be out there? Do you think that he's going to do that once he gets out, if he gets out?
Rich, it's been 22 years, man, since those crimes. I can't imagine that there's anything that anyone could do 22 years after the fact to uncover what may have happened back in 1994.
Okay. What do you think Johnny would be thinking today, Carl?
Oh, Johnny was always one who stood for justice. I think he would as well have been upset at the notion that 13 years to the day of his acquittal, the jury returned a verdict of guilty in this case, and I think that Johnny would agree that he deserves for this case to be released on parole.
Okay, and a couple more questions for Carl Douglas, attorney from the Dream Team back in the 90s here on the show. Watching that documentary, O.J. Made in America, in which you took part and you sat in and won the Oscar, I learned so much about this case that I never knew it had been the case. Is there anything you learned from watching that documentary based on seeing O.J. from behind the scenes and also stories as in one of his confidants basically saying that O.J. admitted it, that he had done this, Carl?
Well, you know, I don't necessarily believe that part of it. There were aspects of O.J.'s private life in San Francisco that I learned. I wasn't aware, for example, of the stories about his father. It was interesting for me to hear some of the stories of his childhood with his friend A.C. Cowlings. So there were some things as well in there that I took some offense to. The suggestion, for example, that O.J. was forewarned that they would have a glove demonstration and thereby he would stop taking medication so his hands would swell up. That, to me, was preposterous. No one at that time thought that there would ever be a glove demonstration. O.J. would always write on pads. There was never a complaint about his hands being swollen. So some people had other motives to spin things their way, put it like that.
So because that was a fascinating part of the documentary, that you were hoping that there would be a glove demonstration. You didn't think it was going to happen.
That is preposterous, Rich, and I can tell you that from being firsthand there. We were told for the first time in court that day that would occur, in part because we wanted to have our own demonstration with the glove at an occasion of a break when no one but a guard would be present. And Chris Darden got wind of our hopes to have a glove demonstration, and he tried to one-up us by having that occur. It was in no way planned or anticipated. And anyone who says to the contrary, I disagree.
And have you ever crossed paths with Mark Fuhrman again, Carl?
You know, I have not had occasion to see Mark Fuhrman, and I almost bought his book because I heard there was a line that if all of the Dream Team had acted like Carl Douglas, the case would not have been a circus. I did not buy it, but I was tempted on that line.
Do you care to respond to that line while you're here on the show, Carl?
You know, it's amazing what cameras will do. The cameras on this time was the best and the worst of our civil and criminal justice system, but I am a big proponent of cameras in the courtroom because I know that all of America was able to see that competence comes in all colors.
Carl E. Douglas, attorney at law, thank you so much for joining me here
Rich,
on the show
my pleasure.
today.
Thanks so much for having me.
You got it. At CEDESQ, short for Esquire.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on radio stations across the country and audience.
Isn't it amazing you can download an app with your thumbprint? You should download our app with your thumbprint.